better. Here's Tony Reale.
We start with something light. The NFL news of the day. League and owners passing the policy for all on the field to, quote, stand and show respect for the flag and the anthem. Anyone that doesn't, their team will be fined. And players will be allowed to stay in the locker room if they wish. NFL Players Association say they were not consulted and find it contradictory to what all parties have discussed in the past. Bill Plaschke, how do you consider the NFL's new policy?
It's a compromise that nobody's going to be happy with, which means it's a compromise to me that works. The NFL is a private business. They have the right to determine that on-field anthem protests are bad for business. The public doesn't understand the protests. We've seen this. They don't get it. They're not going to get it. It's bad for business. So they have the right to shut that down. However, the players still maintain the right to stay off the field for the anthem, come on the field as one after the anthem in a different kind of protest that I think will be just as effective, if not more effective. It's a compromise. Again, nobody's happy. That means it works.
Kevin Blackistone?
I think it's a joke. First of all, neither of these discussions that we're having about this, either from the league or from the NFLPA responding, or what we're going to say in reality media today, and even in media that exists in another reality, is going to be about the reason that people were protesting in the first place, led by Colin Kaepernick, and it has to do with police lethality against black men in this country. And if you keep an eye on the Washington Post and the Guardian, who keep track of police killings in this country, they are still ratcheting up, although it is impressive to see that there's been a slight drop-off in the killing of unarmed black men in this country over time. So that's what this is all about. But for anybody in this country who ever thought that this was at all about patriotism, you are reminded by what the NFL just did today that it's not about patriotism. It's about public relations. It's about politics. It's about policy. It's about brand. It's about marketing. It's about advertising. It's about nothing else. And what this really is coercion against the players. And I hope that they can find some unity in this disunity that the NFL has tried to create today.
Tim Kalisha?
Yeah, my biggest problem is the disunity that Kevin Blackistone talks about. They're saying the players, if they want to protest, they can just stay in the locker room and then come out after. Why don't we just identify and vilify all these players who are doing that? That's essentially what the league is doing. Now, I think some teams will get together and say, let's just keep the whole team in there and do that as one. But there are players who probably won't like that, who would like to be part of the anthem. So it's going to divide teams regardless. About the only thing they got right was they didn't do the silly thing that we heard about yesterday, which was a possible 15-yard penalty for players protesting, which had us all thinking about, you know, the singer singing Home of the Brave and then the referee throwing the flag in the air for unsportsmanlike conduct for a 15-yard penalty. That would have been the ultimate nonsense.
And Woody Page?
Well, Kevin's absolutely right. It's all about public perception and the reaction to what goes on in regard to disrespecting the flag and the national anthem. So I'm going to say this. I think the national anthem should go back to being played before the players come out. That's the way it used to be in the NFL for about 40 years. I don't know why they don't go back to that. But if they're going to do that and players want to be a part of it, then go back into the locker room and all come out together, including those who stayed in the locker room. And I would add this, which bothers me more than all this talk, is fans. Thousands of fans disrespect the flag and the national anthem. They're drinking beer. They're talking. I've talked about this before. So those people should stay back in the concourse if they're going to disrespect the anthem and the flag. And it has nothing to do with violence in this country. That has to do with people who just aren't paying attention to the national anthem.
Bill, I want to give you a chance to respond, maybe even specifically to what Tim Kalisha was saying about doesn't this vilify players who stay in the locker room? And is that creating a new problem for the NFL? Go ahead.
No. I mean, I think it actually would. They can come out as one, and the protests are important, and they're very important, and they mean something, and people should listen to them. But the NFL's audience doesn't listen to them. The NFL's determined that no matter what they say, the audience doesn't get it. So the NFL has to react to that.
Wasn't the Players Association saying right now the owners aren't listening? The commissioners, they say they weren't consulted in this. Kevin, you want to address that?
Yeah, I don't understand how they cannot consult the players on this. But you know what? Actually, if I'm the players, I don't want to consult on this. Protest is not something that you draw up as a game plan for everybody to get along with. Protest is about making people uncomfortable about a very important situation. And that's what Colin Kaepernick and the players who have joined him have done. And you can see that the league is still very, very uncomfortable about what they have. You
don't ask for permission when you want to protest something.
Exactly.
I hear that, Kevin Black. Last thing on this, we're hearing it was a unanimous vote, and then in the same breath we're hearing Jed York. Well, he abstained from the vote. He allowed that to be public, although he didn't give his reasons why he abstained. How do you consider that, Tim?
Well, that means it wasn't 32-0. They didn't give any kind of figure. Usually we've seen those before. There's votes, and it would be 31-0-1, and that would be Al Davis abstaining from something whenever they were passing things. They stayed away from that this time.
And then one last thing. Hearing people say today the NBA has this policy. It's basically a similar policy. You have to stand for the anthem in the NBA. And the NFL has been through so much in the last 24 months with the anthem. Woody, how do you consider when you hear someone try to draw that comparison?
Well, I know that was a situation that I dealt with a long time ago in regard to Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. And I supported him in regard to staying in the locker room. That's what I wrote about at the time. Stay in the locker room, but don't come out and sit on the bench while the rest of the players are there. And as a result of that, he actually did start staying in the locker room, and it kind of calmed down that entire situation.
You think it calmed it down? Because some would say it vilified him even more and didn't provide any, release with the actual protest that he was making at the time. Which was
it calmed down the situation, but it destroyed his career as a player.
We've been Horn. We're going to move on. Basketball now. Last night's lunacy. 2 places to start. The Warriors' worst quarter of the season, where they looked like they completely forgot how to play basketball. Steve Kerr quote, "We just ran out of gas," is what he said. And the broken possession that decided the game. Steve Kerr said after the game he tried to get a timeout. Draymond couldn't get the ref's attention. Tim, how'd you read how the Warriors played at the finish of Game 4?
I thought the finish was as bad as the rest of the fourth quarter, where they scored a total of 12 points. I think Steve Kerr should have called timeout as soon as he saw Kevin Durant dribbling the ball up the floor. That's not the guy you want doing that. You want Steph Curry doing that. Kevin is not he's a great player, obviously. He's not a great facilitator, and he wasn't really having a good game. He certainly wasn't having a good shooting game, and he got the ball to Klay Thompson in a terrible position, and Klay couldn't get rid of it. So that was a big mess. But in the fourth quarter, they scored 12 points. They got out-rebounded 16-8. The Rockets defensively shut them down. The Warriors were the team that ran out of gas, and both teams are playing with kind of a short bench. But after all that celebration by Curry and the Warriors in the third quarter, they were the ones, surprisingly, that had nothing left, and now we finally have a great series on our hands.
Kevin Blackstone?
And what was the signature play for the first Durant-Warriors championship game? It was Kevin Durant coming down and pulling up for a 3 right in LeBron's face. That wasn't a play. This is the ISO series. This is what these guys do best. So whether he got a timeout or not, I don't think really made a difference. And let's not forget that on that play where you had that badly missed shot, they got Paul got the rebound. He got fouled. They went back and looked. They put 5 ticks back on the clock. He got a chance to draw up a play once again, got it to Steph Curry, and he missed a shot. So that's what that came down to. And as Tim said, you got to credit the defense that the Rockets were able to muster in that fourth quarter, holding them to just 12 points.
Plaschke?
The Warriors got hit in the mouth and they panicked. That's the bottom line in the fourth quarter. P.J. Tucker, how tall is P.J. Tucker? He got 16 rebounds. The Rockets out-blocked shots 9-3 against the Warriors. The Warriors came down the floor. The Warriors looked like a bad Rockets team in the fourth quarter, playing all that ISO ball. And don't talk about the Warriors being gassed. Steph Curry, he sat for 9 minutes. It was amazing. He was so hot in the first half and in the third quarter. He sat for 9 minutes in the second half, and they were outscored by 13 points while Steph Curry was sitting down. Once he came on the court, he was the same old flipping Steph Curry, throwing the ball around, Durant taking terrible shots. The Warriors, again, were by a desperate Rockets team, hit him in the mouth, and Houston and Golden State panicked.
Woody Page.
Let's smooth it out and fill in some blanks here. Klay Thompson should have called the timeout. He's standing right next to the referee. It shouldn't be a coach at the other end or anybody else on the floor. Why didn't he call timeout? He knows he's surrounded by 2 guys. That's a bad situation there. And Durant could have called a timeout. Once he got over midcourt, and sees that he's got nothing to work with, he should have called a timeout. So they should have got that done. But in regard to the fourth quarter, you go 3 for 18. You have 1 assist in the entire quarter. You're the best assist team in all of basketball. You go 0 for 6 from the three-point line, which you're supposed to own, and Durant and Curry disappear. I put it all on the 2 of those guys because they're supposed to continue what they were doing in the third quarter, and they just disappeared. They didn't materialize when they had to down the stretch. They got exactly what they deserved.
And now we get something maybe we didn't deserve, a series because you all called it over before it even started. Is this the type of loss for Golden State that could have a hangover, or the type of win for Houston that could have a carryover? What are the residuals here, Bill?
Yeah, absolutely. Houston's going back home now, and they see the Warriors can be vulnerable. And, you know, these 7 games these teams have played, Houston's won 4 of those 7 games. So the Rockets are now empowered to a point. And, again, everybody blaming Golden State. Trevor Ariza was right up in their face. Gerald Green was right there. Chris Paul was unbelievable. Give the Rockets credit for this game. This wasn't a Golden State meltdown. The Rockets caused this.
Woody Page?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to have a carryover. We don't know who's going to win the series. We won't get ahead of ourselves here, will we, Bill?
Thank you, Woody Page.
I think that what they have figured out is because of the isolation plays, which they have, that they're creating a situation where the Warriors can't switch off. They're having to play honest defense, and it's working out extremely well. And Chris Paul just continues, I think, to get better and better in this series and take more command of it, basically away from Harden, if you will.
Tim Kalisha?
I may have said that Curry in the third quarter of Game 3 defined this series. That may need to be amended to Harden in the second quarter of Game 4 define this series. That play you just showed, Harden dunking on Draymond Green, that's the play that can be game-changing and playoff-changing for the Rockets. Not just because he dunked, but
because there's about 17 of those plays every single game. You know, Harden doesn't shoot the 3 in the first quarter. You saw this. Harden had the ball in his hands, looking at the rim. Nobody's around him, and he doesn't shoot the 3. Man. And everybody's like, well, that's gonna portend everything in this series, blowout for the Warriors. And then, of course, the Draymond play, and then, of course, Sean Livingston's dunking. No, there's not one play that is a microcosm of anything. Blackstone. A last word on the residual.
Resilience and grit for the Houston Rockets. They were buried twice in this game, 12-0 to start, and then 17-point outburst by Steph in the third, and they came back and won this game.
Yeah. One last thing, Kevin. You had P.J. Tucker. When Bill said he's not so tall, you went like this. P.J. Tucker's 6'5". On you, that's still at the screen. That's still at the screen, Kevin Blackstone. Taking a break right here. We're going to get Game 7 in Barstow. You're certain will decide tonight's game.
You mean other than me cowering in the corner with only the glow of the TV brightening up the room? You know what? It's going to come down to penalty plays. Whether or not the Washington Capitals can play a physical game and stay out of the penalty box, or whether or not they'll be penalized and put the Tampa Lightning in a situation where they've been very good, which was on the special teams.
Tim Kalisha?
I think Blackstone mostly nailed it. The main thing that will also not decide it is me picking the Caps on TV. I've promised my son I won't do that, so that's not going to happen. But realistically, yeah, Washington's been the more physical team. But if they're in the penalty box, Steven Stamkos will score the power play goal that will break their backs. So they've got to be smart. Washington's got to be smart.
Woody Page?
2 words, Nikita Kucherov. He has only 1 goal and 3 assists. This guy scored 100 points during the regular season. He's not only talented, but he's physical for a 24, 25-year-old guy. I think he's going to break out tonight. He's going to win this game with the scoring goal.
Bill Plaschke.
2 other words, Woody. Braden Holtby, 92% save percentage in 6 Game 7s. This is his 7th Game 7. The Caps goaltender. I know it's cliche, but it always comes down to the goaltending in these games. It always does. Holtby's coming off the shutout. Holtby wins the game for the Caps.
Okay, so you're saying the success he's had in Game 7s, while the team hasn't shared that success in Game 7s.
The team hasn't won all those Game 7s.
Yes,
but
well, you're picking the teams here, not who's going to be the best player. That's getting you on mute, Bill Plaschke. Real quick, Blackstone, make your pick. You have to give us something here.
Caps, just because they've won on the road throughout these playoff seasons.
We'll move on. Tonight's Game 5 in Boston, where we have the all-time showdown of momentum versus home courts. In the desire to deem things figured out, and whether the Cavs figured out the Celtics the last 2 games, it's now Brad Stevens' turn to figure out the figuring out. Advantage whom, Bill?
Oh, advantage Boston. It's still 9-0 at home. They're averaging nearly 13 points more per 100 possessions at home during the postseason, and they're desperate. This is a must-win for the Celtics. They'll win.
Woody?
Advantage Boston. I agree with Bill. They haven't lost at home so far. Cleveland looked awful in those first two games, and at that point, the Celtics were fighting through those screens. They got away from it in Cleveland, and they were switching all the time. That ended up with LeBron on Rozier, and that's not a good matchup.
I'm not laughing at you, Woody, but now the entirety of the NBA has come down to how do teams switch? What's switching all about? Tim Cowlishaw, don't switch your pick here. What do you got tonight?
Not going to switch my pick. They've nailed it. The Celtics are undefeated at home. I thought they were close the last game to breaking through in Cleveland. I know they lost by 9. They missed a ton of dunks and layups and close shots. Could have made it a little closer, but they've been great at home. They're going to get some calls at home. Boston wins.
That's all it takes. It's playing at home. How about you, KB?
I don't know.
It's one thing to start at home. It's another thing to go back home having lost the momentum. They've lost the momentum in this series. I don't see it shifting. I don't see LeBron James letting it get away. Tristan Thompson's been a spark plug. And I just don't think that because you're back at home, those possessions all of a sudden are going to go up. Cleveland's playing better defense.
Well, KB, are you going to watch any part of that game at all? You're not going to watch any of it, are you?
We live in a world where you can watch more than one thing at once, Bill Plaschke. You're trying. Bill Plaschke, you're going to be watching the two games in Amelie. So, I mean, you know what? You're losing the Amelie bonus. We'll move on. Buy or sell 3, new kickoff rules. No running start for the kicking team. 8 of 11 men on the receiving team within 15 yards of the kick. No two-man wedge among the changes. Buy or sell, Woody?
I'm selling it. Why don't you just go ahead and get to it? You're going to do it in 2019. Eliminate the kickoffs. Oh, the biggest play, best play in football is a return kickoff for a touchdown. Last year, there were 1,025 returns, 7 touchdowns. That's really what you're waiting for the whole year? No, get rid of it. Put the ball at 25.
I'm selling it. I do think we're getting closer and closer to the end of kickoffs. Punts are largely fair catches now, so we're almost getting rid of special teams at this point. This may have an unusual effect with all the kicking receiving teams blockers up close, but I still don't think it's going to do much.
What type of effect do you think you have?
There's a lot of open space for the guy with the ball to run before they make contact.
So you think,
with him.
field position?
He's got nothing in front of him. He's got nothing in front of him.
Kevin Blackistone, how about you?
The only thing I'll buy here is that the league is acknowledging that concussions are at a greater rate when you're talking about kickoff returns, and they've tried to decide how to get away with it or how to do away with it. Yeah. The one thing I would like them to do is to say the same thing about targeting on the field and pick up the college rule where anyone that takes a shot at somebody's head, accidentally or not, is out of the game, and start to get that out of the game.
What's that?
Woody's right. No more kickoffs. You can't figure if they're trying to change this rule. Nobody's going to understand the rule. You can't officiate. It's too difficult to officiate. Team kickoffs are too dangerous. Statistically, it's been proven. Why are they still kicking off? Why are they still doing it?
Well, if Woody's right, Woody gets the points, Bill Plaschke.
I get the points. Because I was mean to Kevin. Sorry, Kevin.
Well, you guys can figure that out in your own time. You got a Woody Page Tim Cowlishaw showdown next.
It's brought to you by Infiniti. Empower the drive.
Woody Page, Tim Cowlishaw, good luck in showdown. Signing from your couch in the afternoon, flying in the early evening, batting 5th and hitting a double in your first at bat. Does Jose Batista's day tell you more about Jose or the Mets, Woody?
It tells me about the traditions of baseball. Here's a guy that's sitting on the sofa and can get up, take a plane, bat, take no batting practice. Get rid of batting practice. The guy can shoot and score.
I don't think you need batting practice every day this time of year. He can go. This is not that big a deal. He changed teams. He can still hit the baseball. As long as he doesn't flip the bat, we're fine with him here in
Oh, yes, of course. As long as he doesn't flip the bat, says the man from Texas. Woody, you had an easy opportunity to punch out the man in Texas.
Yeah.
But
couldn't do it.
Nobody's getting it. We're moving on. Golf trick shot fail. Who do you blame, dad or toddler? Timmy?
Oh, my goodness. I mean, you would think they would at least practice this. I mean, he must know that this kid has no game. I hope that's a rental club. I'm
blaming the father too. That what in the world was he thinking about to put a kid up there? Thank goodness it wasn't a new Callaway Rogue driver or something that he was product placement that he was using. But My
I like
goodness,
that. I
don't
like the
do that
rental
again.
club. Tim Calishaw, you've earned this FaceTime today.
While we're honoring the Houston Rockets being back in the series, let's not forget that other Houston team, the Houston Astros, rolling along with the best pitching in baseball. A staff that now includes Garrett Cole, formerly of the Pirates, got his 5th win last night, has one of the best ERAs in baseball. Did he tank a little bit? Did he give up a cheap home run to his brother-in-law, Brandon Crawford, after getting a big lead in that game?
Yeah.
Is that okay? They won 11-2. I guess we'll give him a pass.
Well, I think maybe we should ask you because you are the authority on tanking on this show.
I love how Tim co-ops.
And now that I reminded myself of that, you're losing more points, Calishaw. We'll see you guys tomorrow.